Presented at the John Birch Society meeting, Thomaston, Maine, October 9, 2012. The reason we use the John Birch Society for our meetings is so that all liberty activists can come together nationally with other patriots to focus on the same issues so that our efforts are coordinated, not divided, for we believe that national outreach and coordination has the best chance of success. As you watch this presentation, please be thinking about the ways people of the liberty movement have succeeded and gained ground, and where we have expended effort and money and not accomplished things as we might have wished. What works, what doesn't. Meet, greet, eat, bleat, retreat leads to defeat. Being sociable is natural and friendly, but it does not substitute for decisive action any more than does talking about being hungry when standing idly in a kitchen. To satisfy hunger, you need to eat, not simply talk about being hungry. The enemy is not easy to identify, nor are the enemy's methods of fighting against us. We may want to consider how we are being purposely derailed or sidetracked. Our fundamental beliefs about how things are done may be at the root of our failures. We need to challenge assumptions. If false, then we need to replace them with the truth. If the truth feels awkward or unnatural, it is the truth nevertheless. We must adapt to it and not adopt a psychotic mindset. I think we can all agree that those who work against us are terrific liars and employ trickery, bullying, smoke and mirrors, and bread and circuses to attain their goals. Fancy accounting leading to well-paid executives at banks that are bailed out, union thugs in and out of Wisconsin, and ruffians at polling places who remain unchallenged by the president, and stadiums and smart mobile phones at taxpayer expense are facts. And what do we use? Love of God, respect for others, honesty, reverence, clean socks, scholarship, hard work. Anarchy would work perfectly in a world where all people accept these principles. Government is needed only because some people do not. To expand government, the enemy contrives to make some people evil, thereby making such government expansion needed. We have an idea for getting the word out to people about the lies they are facing every day on the local level. Rosa Quarry mentioned using slicks to get the word out to people about meetings, and it occurred to us that we seated here could write our own monthly slicks by each choosing a zip code or two and financing the slicks sent out to that area. An example of a company that will print and mail political cards and flyers. We would each be reporters, keeping our ears tuned for people being harmed by the bullies in government and getting the story behind the harassment, to the point of even going to stand up beside those being harmed. Many presentations have been made against ICLEI recently, and there has been some success at expelling it. It is banned in Alabama, one Florida county, at least 2 Massachusetts towns, and various other cities and counties nationwide. There has been some encouraging news about extricating our nation from the United Nations and recapturing power that should not have been ceded to it in prior decades. One such activity of standing up with others is happening next month in Belfast. Hal Shurtleff, Anna Murkowski, Rita Horsey, Blaine Richardson, and the Mid-Coast Tea Party Patriots will be making a stand in the ICLEI town of Belfast, Maine, and have asked us to join with them. Wednesday, November 7, 2012, 7 p.m., Belfast Free Library, 106 High Street, Belfast, Maine. Free admission. Please come. We have been asked to come early and hold banners if possible. Contact Anna Murkowski for details. 207-200-8724. Please mark your calendars to join us in standing with our fellow patriots in Belfast. Now for the John Birch October Bulletin. The John Birch Society Bulletin, October 2012. Less government, more responsibility, and with God's help, a better world. NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, has continued to exist even after the so-called death of Soviet communism. Its usefulness has now far exceeded the claimed rationale for its original creation. Protecting Western Europe was never the real aim of NATO to begin with. Its purpose was, and remains, a vehicle to entangle our armed forces into and under the de facto command of the UN. The author continues, I personally know of research and development contracts where inferior products were foisted onto the contractor that lessened the ability of the weaponry to provide peak performance. In one instance, an entire project was shut down after it became apparent that it would have ended the Cold War due to the superior capability it would have given to the United States over the entire Soviet bloc at the time. Think about what this means. People familiar with gangs and street warfare know that fistfights and such last only a few seconds, not the several minutes that are made popular on movies and television shows. A war that ends in a few hours is much easier on the economy than a war that takes several years. So why is it that our federal government is not in the business of protecting our borders, as it is supposed to do, but is instead suing the state of Arizona for trying to prevent illegal immigration and entry of weapons? This failure to act includes both Democratic and Republican administrations. The only logical answer is that our leaders do not want to control the border and have something else in mind. Do our country and its handicapped citizens need the UN to tell us how to treat persons with disabilities? We already have the Americans with Disabilities Act and a handful of other laws dealing with this segment of the population, even a 1984 law known as the Voting Accessibility for the Elderly and Handicapped Act. The answer is no, we don't need the UN for this purpose. The UN is doing something similarly to what the federal government has done in taking an issue that is legitimate and rightly belongs to the states and applying federal laws that echo the state laws. Extra rules, extra bureaucracy, extra taxpayer expense. One of the speakers at the Republican National Committee was Ted Cruz, the Tea Party-backed Republican candidate for U.S. Senate in Texas. Cruz is an outspoken critic and opponent of Agenda 21, who has vowed to stop it. In an interview on Glenn Beck's radio show, Cruz said that Agenda 21, quote, takes away from the American way of life, unquote, because it is, quote, viewed as contrary to the agenda of sustainable development, unquote. Cruz continued, quote, even more broadly, it is about putting the tentacles of the United Nations into the very foundations of our government throughout the country, unquote. We should make sure that local police departments stay local. Information from the John Birch Society about a gathering in Texas, and various books and discs for sale. We are not helpless. There are things that we can do. Support sound money laws. Urge your state representatives and senators to introduce an alternative currency bill in Maine based on Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution to help phase out the Federal Reserve by establishing state-authorized currencies based on gold and silver. For more information, go to jbs.org and click on Act Now, then State Legislative Action Alerts. Support an Obamacare nullification bill in Maine. For at least the next half year or so, nullification is the best strategy for stopping Obamacare. Even though congressional repeal with no replacement would be the best solution, it will not be possible in the present Congress, and it might not even be possible in a Republican-controlled Congress due to so many Republicans, including Mitt Romney, favoring repeal and replace. If you have any doubt that the government is not trying to reduce health care costs, but is instead trying to impose bureaucratic machinations so as to increase control, look at exactly what is happening to government regulation of health care. Natural remedies, removal of genetically modified foods, breast cancer prevention, not just screening, and other things that would greatly reduce the cost of health care through direct advances with health care management are being ignored. They would not be ignored, and they would be openly welcomed by the government if the intent is truly to reduce cost. Support a Stop Agenda 21 bill in your state. An excellent anti-Agenda 21 bill, SB 477, was passed by the Alabama State Legislature and signed by the governor in May 2012. To send an email to your state legislators urging them to introduce a bill similar to Alabama's SB 477 in your state in 2013, go to jbs.org, click on Act Now, then State Legislative Action Alerts, then ask your state legislators to introduce a Stop Agenda 21 bill. You don't have to ask only at the state level. Go to your town hall, learn how to circulate a petition and get required signatures, then have it placed on the local ballot saying that your town's official position will be to oppose Agenda 21, ICLEI, and other tampering by non-governmental organizations. It's less complete than preventing Agenda 21 statewide or nationally, but it is easier to do. Oppose the Law of the Sea Treaty. We need to continue to put pressure on our senators to oppose ratification of the Law of the Sea Treaty. Even though Senator Jim DeMint managed to get 34 senators to sign a letter in opposition to ratification of Law of Sea Treaty, as of August 2, 2012, the head of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Tom Donahue, says the Senate will ratify the treaty next year. Furthermore, Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska has announced plans to seek Senate approval during the lame duck session after the November elections, when accountability to voters is at a low point. Oppose the UN Arms Trade Treaty. Even though the UN Conference on the Arms Trade Treaty, July 2 through 27, 2012, failed to reach agreement on a treaty text, the UN's official conference website says, quote, "Governments are now considering the next steps to conclude the negotiations in the not-so-distant future." Unquote. This means we must keep the pressure on our senators to oppose any UN arms trade treaty, because international firearms regulation would necessarily infringe on our right to keep and bear arms as guaranteed by the Second Amendment. we will not allow the United Nations to take over the USA and claim power superior to the United States Constitution. As always, keep the faith and help others to do so too. Less government, more responsibility, and with God's help, a better world.